All right. So, yes, let's go to the defensive coordinator. I thought it was an odd hire at first, but I thought it was interesting when Adam Schefter tweeted. It was either Adam Schefter or one of the other pro football guys that mentioned an innovative guy at Arizona becoming the defensive coordinator at Virginia Tech. And anytime, like, look, there's a lot of defensive coordinators out there, and there's a lot of guys who get jobs, Jack. And it's like when you hear creative and innovative and a guy who's, who deserves this sort of thing from the people who cover from the pros, like that kind of made me feel a little bit better considering I had never heard of this guy, and he certainly wasn't on anybody's radars.
Yeah, and I love defense. I love the NFL, and I'm a Seahawks fan at heart. So NFC West, Arizona Cardinals, all that good stuff. I had never heard of this guy before. And when you make that type of hire, Brent Pry's really putting his neck out with this. He believes in what Sam Siefkes brings to the table. He believes in the defensive scheme. From your conversation with him, we've got a couple sound bites that we'll be playing from that conversation you had with Border to Border. Sounds like a really innovative, really smart defensive coordinator that should fit in well in Blacksburg. But it is Brent Pry putting his neck out on the line with making a relatively out-of-the-box hire.
Well, and the pressure is there somewhat because Brent Pry's a defensive guy, but Foster's going to be lurking around there, and he's another defensive guy. So you're kind of putting a little bit of pressure on this guy with the background that is surrounding him, and hopefully he kind of uses those people, as he comes to that school.
Yeah, and I know he had NFL experience with the Cardinals and the Vikings. He went right from the FCS to the NFL started at a Division III school, Wisconsin-Platteville, jumps up to the FCS level with Wofford, then jumps up to the NFL with the Vikings and the Cardinals. Feels like a very interesting steps in Siefkes' career. Very interesting stuff.
Yeah, and I was just looking, his contract, he's getting the same amount as the previous defensive coordinator, $875,000. So, that's not bad. It's not great.
Does that feel low for an ACC school?
Yes.
That feels very low. And it makes sense on why Bowen left the role with Virginia Tech as the offensive coordinator to become the offensive line coach at Ohio State.
Yeah, they said he was going to make about $120,000, $130,000 more at that position. But this is, we talk about the inequality involving players and NIL. This is the inequality involving coaches and NIL, and having a program that, is just won the national championship, and that brought in a whole bunch of money. So why not, pay a little bit out for the best coaches you can get?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Use that money that you just got.
Yeah, so let's take a listen to some things that the defensive coordinator Sam Siefkes had to say. First off, you have to find out how much did he know about the Virginia Tech program before taking the job.
I think just the nostalgia was probably the biggest thing. Understanding the tradition that's been here for a long, long time. I've watched that from afar for quite a lot of time now, but that's really it. I know they've played really great defense, ever since I can remember with, Coach Bud Foster. And that was probably the biggest draw was, they've done a lot of great things here, and I felt like I could selfishly insert myself in and hopefully kind of take it to the next step.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. The lunch pail thing, for people on the outside who probably don't understand it, Jack, like they love the lunch pail. And I know that there's certain coaches who want to get rid of certain traditions and things like that. The lunch pail will be in Blacksburg until there is no football. And even if there is no football in Blacksburg, there will still be a tradition involving the lunch pail.
There'll always be a lunch pail sitting in a random field. If there's no football, that's what the lunch pail will come to. But it is good to know that. I think that is a huge key in success for a lot of these hires, is being okay with the tradition and leaning into the tradition. Because not only does it help you win over the fan base, it makes you relatable to the players. And relatable is not really the word I'm trying to say, but like it fits you in within the culture. They understand that you're not going in to change the culture. You want to improve it. You want to work on it, and you want to get things better. If he had come in, which he very well could have, from the NFL, who doesn't have these things of the lunch pail, they don't have the tradition. I wouldn't have been shocked if he was like, we're here to play football and we're going to play football really well. But he made sure of it to talk about the tradition, to talk about the nostalgia around the program.
Yeah. And when the lunch pail's always at media day, and the defensive players are always, talking about it, and I always make sure to ask them about what it means and things like that. And that was something that was never ever going to leave the program. One thing I kind of hope does leave the program eventually is the struggles against mobile quarterbacks. I swear, the last couple of years of Bud, and ever since Bud, this team has not been able to defend mobile quarterbacks. Now, it's not an easy thing. Don't get me wrong. That's why you want a mobile quarterback, is because they are very difficult to defend. And so that's something that I definitely had to ask the new defensive coordinator about. What's your philosophy with taking care of going up against mobile quarterbacks?
Well, I think the confusion piece of giving multiple looks, I think that goes understated a lot of times. A lot of people understand how to account for the quarterback, but it's giving that guy multiple looks so that he doesn't understand where things are coming from, and it requires him to read space, and so that's my biggest thing is, I think the NFL game is getting more into that with running the quarterback, and it's catching up to college a little bit in that regard. And so you have to be able to change those looks up and not just make it a defensive end that's taking the quarterback every single time. If you do that, you're going to get creased. So I think that's the biggest thing I've learned is you have to continue to change those looks and make the quarterback think on the run.
I love defensive terminology. Get creased.
I was going to say, I've never heard that before.
I think it's the first time creased has ever made my radio show in this podcast. But I mean, it sounds good. It sounds good in theory. I'm glad that it sounds like they're going to actively try and stop it, because I'm sure Hokie fans can tell you, like, there's a lot of mobile quarterbacks nowadays. I mean, everybody's got them, and you really should have them. And Tech could not stop them. And, that's kind of where we're heading. I mean, Diego Pavia, week 1, was running up and down the field. Like, that's why I had no faith in them in overtime, because Pavia just got yards and got first downs. And so, like, they've got to figure that out. And it sounds like, the new defensive coordinator has a strategy for it.
Yeah, and in this last year, I'm just probably should have prepped with this one, but was looking at rushing yards that they allowed this season. The Cardinals, that is, against quarterbacks. I know Siefkes wasn't the primary defensive coordinator, but they really didn't allow a lot of rushing yards against opposing quarterbacks. The most they allowed was later on in the season against the Panthers, where Bryce Young had 68 rushing yards. So overall, the Cardinals did a good job of slowing down mobile quarterbacks this past season. Bodes well for the Hokies going into 2025.
So one last clip from him. And we talked about it earlier. Bud Foster is going to be around. He's going to help out. Brent Pryce, another defensive guy in this room that will be there. So I asked the defensive coordinator, the new defensive coordinator, what's his relationship with Bud going to be like?
Yeah, Bud's been great. I actually just had lunch with him literally 10 minutes ago. I got back. So we had a very nice conversation, and I want Bud to be involved as much as he wants to be involved, and so that's kind of the thing that we discussed, what that would look like. I know obviously him and Coach Pry go way back, but I have nothing but admiration for what he's done in his career and what he's done at Virginia Tech and the success.
So my theory all along was, the Hokies are having people left and right opting out for the bowl game, people transferring out of the program. I thought they brought Bud back to try and get a positive headline amongst all the negativity that was surrounding the program. And I'll be interested to see how much he does and how much he is there for the weekly game plans and things like that. But, that's important to kind of keep Bud around. But then, the game has modernized a little bit since Bud was out there.
Just a little bit, just a few extra creases, as Siefkes would say. You don't want your defensive end to get creased, but getting him involved is a really nice thing to do. Kind of keep him around, and it kind of goes back to the nostalgia, the tradition, and everything around it. It's good to kind of have that type of guy in your corner.